So we wanted to hop on here today and we wanted to share this with you because Kirstie and I have never sat down and actually had a conversation face to face with each other. And what you might not know is that we are both in Texas. So I guess technically we are both competitors of each other, but we're really different from each other with what we do. So I thought that maybe it would be fun to hop on and just kind of share a little bit about both of our journeys and our stories and kind of what we do, how we do them differently, and how that allows us to be in the same market, but also not really have to compete with each other because we are unique in what we do and stuff. So I guess, do you want to go first sharing what you do, your business model and kind of stuff, and then I'll kind of share my business model?
Sure. So there's like always such a hot debate about the ends of the spectrum, and I feel like you and I are pretty far
We
opposite
are.
of the spectrum, which is really cool. So I'm excited to talk about today. Yeah. So I own an equine portrait photography business outside of Dallas, Texas, named Kirstie Photography. And the way that I have structured my pricing is what I consider to be all inclusive. So I have four packages that every single package includes all the high resolution images that are completely edited and fully released for personal use. A wooden box of 4x6 proof prints. So every image is released online, is printed in the box, and then also has a USB. And so then the three packages on top of the lowest also include a print credit so that people can order albums, prints, canvases, calendars, whatever their heart desires. But the reason I consider that all inclusive is because for one single price that they pick before the session, select before the session, they receive the high resolution files that are released and a printed version of each of the images. So that's how I've kind of structured my packages and the products and services inside of them.
Yes, I love that. I at one point in time I actually did something similar. So that is really interesting. Now that you were saying all of that, I was thinking to myself, I did actually kind of do that, but a little bit differently at one point in time. So I am what you would call a pretty like strict IPS photographer. So I do in-person sales. My clients pay a session fee. The session fee covers my travel to them, my time photographing the session, and a print credit. So they get a big print credit that they can use towards their favorite portraits. But the difference is that they get to see all of their portraits after the session over Zoom. We go through them, we talk about which ones they love. Then they decide how they want to spend that print credit, and then they can spend more. So my clients are not getting all of their photos. They're just getting their favorites that they really, really love. And I am very hands-on in helping them pick and choose which ones are their favorites, and like helping them design stuff and all of that good stuff. Because I struggle with that personally. So I love that like I can help them with that. And so, yeah, that's kind of your basic true IPS photographer model. I would say the only difference is that I don't do IPS in-person sales in person. I do it over Zoom. And I am not a high pressure salesperson either. So low pressure virtual IPS, I guess, is what you would call my business model.
Okay, awesome.
Yes. So I guess the next step was, how did you get to the point that you decided to go all inclusive?
Yeah. So, I didn't know of any other portrait photographers with a model similar to mine when I was starting out. But I can tell you that I had a very poor experience after college with a photographer where there just was a huge lack of communication about pricing, about what was included, about even like what she offered in general. And so after that experience, just felt so misled, so ripped off. Like that was not at all what I had expected. And then my next encounter being a consumer of photography was my wedding photographer. And the juxtaposition between those two was just enormous because I felt like the value of what I was receiving, even though I spent 10 times the amount, the value of what I was receiving just felt enormous. And so, I I had this wedding photographer where it's very common in wedding photography to have more of an all-inclusive structure, right? I had the released images from him that were all edited and ready to go. And he included the proof prints in a wood box. So everything was printed, everything was digital as well. And I just felt like I got everything that I wanted. I was thrilled. The whole experience was wonderful. Right after that, I had gone on our honeymoon, which was an all-inclusive vacation. And that was the first time I had ever vacationed all-inclusive as well. And I was like, this is the greatest. Like, you pay the fee and then you don't have to stress about anything afterwards, right? So it was kind of honestly between my honeymoon and the wedding photography experience that I had, I was like, this is what I would love to deliver in a portrait photography format. So, you know, there were certainly, I wasn't unique in that of offering all of the files. I mean, like, if you were to pit the two against each other, there's shoot and burn, which is typically like notoriously a very low price in releasing all of the files. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's the in-person sales, which is you're withholding the images and selling them individually after the session, right? And those are kind of like the two pitted against each other. And I wouldn't have considered myself shoot and burn because of the entry price I was starting at. I mean, like when I started my business with these all-inclusive packages, my lowest package was $995. And so that I didn't feel like that quite put me in the shoot and burn category, especially because I was also delivering the proof prints. So that's why I kind of considered it not shoot and burn, but more like all-inclusive. And so with my lowest package being $995 and building up from there, I'd kind of just created, and not to say other photographers weren't doing that, but I didn't know of any other portrait photographers doing that. Wedding photographers, yes, absolutely. I kind of structured my whole package system based off how wedding photography was consumed. But portrait photographers, I wasn't aware of anybody else doing it. So I was like, I felt like a pioneer of just being like, I think this can work. And I think this is what the market has an appetite for. Because as a consumer, this is what I like, but honestly, it was pretty untested. And so I kind of was the guinea pig of like, is this going to work?
How many years ago was that you started your business?
The end of 2013 is when I opened my business.
Okay, cool. I love that. So it's funny because you and I had completely polar opposite experiences because the reason that I decided I love the IPS model and I loved like selling albums and having my clients like sit down with me and sort through their photos. Right after I got out of college, I had started my business my last semester in college. So that was 2012.
Oops, my AirPod died. So I started my business right after I got out of college. And I was kind of new. I was doing like kind of like all the digital files included thing at first. And I thought I was going to sell wall art, but I didn't know how to do it. I was trying and I was like stumbling through this weird process really haphazardly. And I hired a photographer to do my boudoir photos. And it was amazing. I loved every second of it. Like, I remember going into her studio. First of all, I remember finding her on Instagram, which was like early days of Instagram. And I found her work and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. We were sitting at Chili's eating dinner and I was like trying to hide it from my husband what I was looking at so he didn't know. And I contacted her. I was like, I want to do boudoir photos with you. And booked a session, went to her studio, sat down for like the information meeting before I booked. Like, she asked me about myself. She asked me about what I liked about my body, what I didn't like about my body. She like was so excited. She like acted like she was my best friend that I never knew I had. She went through so many things. She showed me all the products. She told me how much they cost. She said, this is what most people buy. And I was like, oh my gosh, that album is so pretty, but there's no way I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on an album. I just graduated from college. I'm trying to start my business. We are paying for our own wedding. I am broke. There's no way. And I went through the process and like did the session, like was trying on like all these lingerie things, texting her photos, she's giving me advice. And it was just amazing. Did the session, loved it. It was the most fun experience ever. Like, I still to this day remember the way it made me feel. Then sit down and seeing the photos. and being like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love all of these so much. How would I ever decide what to do with them? And like, I was so grateful for the fact that she was there to guide me along in the process. And then the realization of, oh my gosh, I love them all so much. I have to do that album. I don't care how much it costs because it is that beautiful. And I need all of these photos. And like being so excited to spend the money and like being so proud of myself that I was able to somehow like save thousands of dollars secretly and hide it from my soon to be husband and buy him this gift. Like it just made it that much better. And it was truly amazing for me. So I quickly discovered that that's what I wanted to do in my business. And I didn't really know how to do it. And again, one day I'm sitting on Facebook and I see this random post come up for this photographer that was offering like a one-on-one coaching program to teach how to do sales and sell wall art. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I can pay for this, but I'm going to sign up. And I did. And I signed up for this program, and she kind of helped introduce me to the idea of in-person sales. And like my prices were so low back then, like compared to what they are now. Like I was selling like $35 prints. And like, I thought that was like so much money and I was freaking out. And like, my canvases were like $300 for a giant canvas and it felt like so much money. It was back then, it felt like it. And over the years that's changed, but I'll also add, so I started out doing weddings and newborns. And actually before I had my own business, I worked for a livestock photographer. Fun fact, most people don't know about me. But so I did weddings and I did newborns. So I've done the wedding photography pricing and I've done it. I have tried every pricing model there was. When I was a wedding photographer, there was a time when my husband was like, if you change your pricing one more time, Karinda, like this is ridiculous. I would just like try different methods because I was convinced that like the next one that somebody taught was going to be the best. And the next one that somebody else taught was going to be the best. And I kind of got into the vicious cycle of like, I would go to a workshop or a conference and I'd hear something and I'd be like, that's so cool. I want to try it. And I would completely reinvent the wheel. And I would get an inquiry one day and try this pricing model and an inquiry the next day and I would try this pricing model. Like I was crazy and it drove my husband insane. We had this joke for a long time about it. So I did that in the wedding photography world. And then in my newborn world, I also tried and experimented quite a bit, probably not as much as I did with my wedding pricing. But I played around a lot with different things in the early years. And I ended up essentially taking a lot of pieces of what a lot of really great educators that I had learned from or mentors that I had hired, bits and pieces of what they taught me and like putting them into something that I believed in and really worked for me, which was I want all of my clients to have an album. That was really important. And I wanted them to have at least something on their wall. And for me, I was like, I don't need them to have all the pictures of themselves because I would sit there and glaze over staring at pictures of myself. So that's kind of how I came upon where I'm at today with my pricing. And, it's something that I love and I'm passionate about, just like you're so passionate about your pricing. I'll also kind of share a funny story because I've never told you this. So a long time ago, I'm sure you probably remember, I contacted you about doing photos like a long time ago. Like when I was first doing equine photography stuff, I was like, I need to hire somebody to do this with me. And I reached out to you because I was like, you're the best. Of course I'm going to hire her. And then you sent me your pricing and I was like, I don't like pictures of myself. I don't want 100 pictures of myself in a box. Can I just, and honestly, like I looking back on it, I should have just done it. But like, it was one of my insecurities, like not loving photos of myself and being that person that's like, I just need a few of the really good ones because like, there's only a few pictures of me that I really love. That stopped me from booking a session, which I think is interesting because like, that's what makes us different, right? Somebody who might be insecure about themselves and be like, I don't need them all. I don't love myself that much versus somebody that's like, oh my gosh, I love photos of myself. They're going to go to you. Right. And I just told my husband the other day, I was like, I just need to do it. I need to finally hire her to come take my photos and just suck up the fact that I don't like pictures of myself and just do it. So yeah, that's kind of my journey and how I got there. So yeah, do you want to share kind of like what your, like, do you have like a low end price that you're like, this is the minimum somebody can pay me, or like an average, or like, do you have people that come and buy lots of wall art and stuff using the system that you use?
Okay, so that's a lot of questions. I one thing that I just like kind of wanted to piggyback off of what you said was that I always preach the more different we all are, the more we're going to succeed. And
Correct.
what you said about being passionate about what you're selling, I mean, we are the only salesperson in our business.
Right.
So if you don't believe in what you're selling, like how are you going to be a successful salesperson? So I am very passionate, like as an educator, to be like, I am never here to teach you my system ever.
Right.
I am not here to replicate myself. I do not want to go and create clones. Like, and none of my courses are how to copy myself at all. It's all about how to find, like how to tap into your superpower and how to
Right.
find what your heart and your passion is trying to say. Because the more different that we all are, you know, you and I are going to attract a very different set of people. And I think that that's important. I don't think that one business model should be all the things to all the people. I don't think you should, you know, have 1,000 different pricing strategies so that you can cater to every single, you know, like segment of this market. I think that you should hone into what you're very passionate about, like you just did, and then give your clients the best experience ever, which is what you do. And which is why I have so much immense respect for what you do and who you are and the business that you offer within this industry. So back to the questions that you were firing at me. So when I go through, you know, spreadsheets of the cost of how I do business and the minimum amounts that I need to charge to be able to take home the salary that I want to, the minimums I am currently at is about $1,500. So with that, my lowest package is $1,895 currently. And that is only for local sessions. If I'm going to travel at all, you're pushed into my top 3 packages. So I only offer my lowest session, which starts at $1,895 for people who are local to me. If there's any type of travel, in addition to the travel fee, they're going to have to go with a higher package. So, you know, my average spend this year was over $3,100 per client. And, you know, with the print credit that I offer, people can purchase prints through the online gallery that I delivered through. And all of that is, I don't have it self-fulfilled. I have it auto-fulfilled. So all of that is just going straight to my labs. Or more commonly, I am holding their hand through the process. Typically, it's just over email, though. So they'll let me know what they're considering. I'll mock up a whole bunch of different options. So if they want XYZ as wall art, I mock that up digitally. I send that to them. It can be on a stock wall, or they'll send me a picture of their wall. I'll mock all that up. I'll send that to them. So I regularly have wall art sales, album sales. I design all the albums. They just mark their favorite images that they want in there. I mean, this is a really big misconception. I feel like that once you offer the digital file, you've lost the rest of the sale. That's what was screamed to me on the internet over and over when you get into these like heated debates about, you know, the 2 pricing models, is that you've lost the sale after you hand over the high resolution file. And since 2013, I just personally have never found that to be true. You know, my highest sales, I have a lot of repeat clients. So my highest like individual sale from one portrait session is over $7,000. I regularly have, you know, my average is 3,100, but I regularly have $5,000 to $7,000 sales from an individual portrait session. You know, when they're adding wall art and albums, yes, they have the high resolution file. Yes, they can go to Costco or Minted or Artifact Uprising, or anything like that. They can go do it themselves. But if they would like my help, I love to help them through that process, through selecting, you know, getting the galleries and everything like that. So did I answer all of your questions? I forget.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll share my flip side of that. So I have my minimum. So my minimum spend is like around $1,100 plus my session fee part. So it's around like $1,350 is kind of my minimum spend. That's my place where like somebody wants to come work with me, they're on a budget. I think that they can come work with me for around $1,350 all in. They can walk away with a smaller set of images without wall art, just small prints and digitals, and they'll be happy with that. I would say my most common sale is like the $4,000 to $5,000 range. And sometimes I do have clients that spend upwards of 10. I've had like a $20,000 client, but those are anomalies to some extent, right? Not everybody's going to spend $20,000 on portraits. I'll also say like probably one of the difference is too in the amount of our sales, I would assume has to do with the products too. Because if you're fulfilling through your lab, you're probably selling like your traditional canvas and things like that. Whereas I'm selling a premium guild canvas, which is much more expensive, which means I'm selling a lot. My prices on my canvases are probably much higher than what you're selling in your galleries. So I would assume if we looked at what we were selling, we would actually probably be selling about the same. Most of my clients are buying an album and they're getting wall art of some sort, and that gets them to that $5,000 range. So I bet if we compared like really apples to apples, we were walking away the same way. So yeah, that's kind of my average there and what most of my clients do. But I love this point about the digital file thing. I think that you totally can give the digital files away for the right price, I should say. And you can still have clients that want to buy art from you. And you just have to offer the experience to them and offer the process to them. Like one of my coaching clients, she just like had a client that got all their digital files and then she went and sold like $14,000 of stuff. They bought like multiple albums and multiple huge pieces of wall art for multiple rooms. And it was like one of her first experiences like selling wall art to anybody. And she was like, holy crap, this is amazing. And I was like, wow, you got lucky. Like one of your first times around. That was really cool. It doesn't happen all the time, but good for you. And I think that was a really cool example of like digital files don't really mean that they're not going to buy art from you. So that's a really cool point there. Yeah. Do you have any questions about like what I do with that?
Okay, I do. Like, I'm curious about how long is your session? How many images will you take? And then how many images are you showing them? Average, how many images are they purchasing?
Yeah. So my sessions,
really big
yeah,
you know what I mean?
So my sessions are 90 minutes. 90 minutes. I am an overshooter. I typically am there for like 2 hours. That's for like a traditional outdoor portrait session. Like my black backgrounds are 30-minute sessions. I normally shoot them in about really 15 minutes. So let's talk about outdoor sessions. So a typical outdoor session, 90 minutes technically, like I said, I'm there for about 2 hours. 2 different looks is all I do. I'm showing them typically 70 to 80 photos if they only have one horse and it's one person. If it's multiple people, multiple horses, sometimes I'll push that like 100 to 120 mark, depending on how many people and how many horses.
So I think that's a lot more than a lot of IPS photographers. Do you think that's because the horse is in there and because it really changes the dynamic of the image, like posing wise?
Yeah, so I'm a overshooter, like really bad overshooter. I'm big like flow posing and overshooting is my thing. And
same. I just feel like a lot of IPS photographers I'm familiar with show like 30 to 40 images in a field session.
Correct.
Or like even try to pare it down like farther than that.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just like surprised like that you would leaf through 80 to 100 pictures over Zoom.
Yeah, I do. And it only takes like maybe like 15, 20 minutes to get through all of them. It doesn't take a long time. I have a really good process. So I typically find clients love about 30% of what they see. So typically the first pass through, about 30% of what they see will end up in their love pile. Sometimes I end up with those clients that love like 60, 70, 80 in that range, but those are my bigger sessions. So I typically consider that I'm going to sell about 30% of what I show them. And most of the time, that's also how I sell so many albums, because I'm selling albums because I'm showing such a variety of photos that people really can't part with all of them. So it's easier to sell an album when you're showing a variety. If I was only showing like 30, 40 photos, like it would be easy to
need all of them in the album.
Right? Either get all of them in an album or cut them down and not end up with an album. So that's why I sell so many albums. But I would say about 30% of what I show people typically buy. Most of my clients get an album with about 40 of their favorite portraits in it. Yeah. And then sometimes I have the 60, 70 in an album kind of people, but those are normally multiple horses and multiple people. And then my albums start with 25. So 25 is kind of like the low end. And then normally I'm selling at least 3.
How many spreads would 25 pictures be?
25 images. So I my albums are super simple. So I either put 1 or 2 images on a spread.
Okay.
So it's about like, I don't know, it depends on the session.
Yeah.
So about 15 spreads normally is
Okay.
the bare minimum. So yeah, I sell a lot of albums because I show so many photos. I think it's harder to sell albums than like image boxes if you're not shooting a lot. But I don't think you have to like cull images. I hate culling too,
Yeah.
right? Like I shoot like 1,000 images at a session and I cull them down to like 100. So I like am really bad at overshooting. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. For my fine art, like my white or black backgrounds, typically I am showing 20 to 25 images for those per horse. And normally I'm selling one big statement piece of art or multiple pieces of art. I'll sell albums if the people have multiple horses, because they'll get like an album with a few photos of each horse. But typically I'm selling wall art. And those sessions this year, I'm sitting at like around a $3,000 average for wall art sales. But $3,000 is just one really big guild canvas.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind too, because guilds are so expensive, right? So that's kind of a little bit of a thing to keep in mind when people are saying, when you hear photographers saying they have like huge giant sales, they're not having huge,
very greatly. Yeah.
yeah, they're not having huge giant sales because they're offering like CG Pros cheap canvases. They're having huge giant sales because they're offering like really high-end, expensive luxury product lines, which they can charge more money from. So if you're sitting there thinking, I can't even add up my canvases to make a $5,000 sale, it's because you're not offering like one of the higher end lines. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, my session lengths vary by the package that you get. So, my lowest session length is an hour and then it goes up to 3 hours. I shoot probably about 1,500 images in an hour session, up to 2,500 images if it's a 3-hour session. And then after tolling down that, what I would deliver is probably about 100 images in an hour, up to about 250 images for a 3-hour session. It's kind of my shooting versus delivering. So when you say you overshoot, I understand.
Like you make me not feel like an overshooter. So thanks for that.
I go into every single session with the sole goal of shooting less. And all I do is shoot more. I feel like every single time all I do is shoot more. I'm going to shoot less. I'm going to shoot less. I have to shoot less.
Do you shoot film still? You used to shoot some film, right?
I used to be exclusively film. I started 100% film.
How can you used to have been a film shooter and you're an overshooter?
Yeah, I think that's why. I legitimately think my insecurity from missing shots or restricting my shots back like when I was film is why I overshoot so badly now. Because I'm like, oh, if I lay on the shutter, I'm going to get the shot and then I won't have to Photoshop it. Like I won't have to face swap. I won't have to swap ears.
That's so funny.
I have more culling to do, but then I have less time to retouch.
When I shot weddings, because the first half of my first 5 years of my business was wedding and newborns, I learned how to shoot film because that's what you do when you're a wedding photographer. You want to learn how to shoot film, so you have those pretty grainy, airy photos. And I was like, this is going to make me better at not overshooting. No, it didn't help at all.
No, I swear it made me worse.
That's so funny. I love that. Did you start out shooting horses or did you shoot other things in the beginning?
I started with horses and I never landed on anything else. No, I bought myself a camera for Christmas in 2011 and I went out to my parents' front pasture and practiced on the horses. And then I started asking my friends to model for me with their horses. And I mean, horses were the only thing worth capturing to me. Like it's the only story I wanted to tell was the love between a girl and her horse.
Right.
It's the only thing that inspired me. And so I never delved into anything else. Now, I worked for a wedding and portrait photographer. And so I second and third shot for her a lot, and I assisted her a lot on weddings, and was like, yeah, I never want to do this, and I would assist her on the newborn shoots and was like, yeah, I never want to do this, and other things like that. So I got experience, not firsthand, but I think even better was kind of like secondhand, being able to see it without the pressure being on you, and realized quickly, like, that was not for me. I'm like, all I care about is girls and horses. So that's what I started with, and that's what I've stayed with since day one.
That's amazing. I learned how to use my camera. I was a working student at a barn, and I was bored while I was waiting to like tack new horses up. So I found this camera and I started using it, and that's how I learned how to take photos. And then it was like, oh, you want to do weddings? You should do babies. Like, that's just what happened, because that's what people assume you do.
Well, there's such a big market for it. I mean, I swear to God, if I got $1 for every wedding inquiry I get, like,
no.
I mean, it feels, I'm sure wedding photography is not an easy industry, but my goodness, the amount of inquiries I get for weddings, I'm like, oh, I need an associate photographer who does all my weddings so that I just don't show up.
It's a great idea.
That's my next business venture.
That's so funny.
I'm all the weddings and hire them out.
Right. I'm glad I shot weddings and like people by themselves before I added horses into the equation, though, because like now I go to pose people by themselves without a horse, and I'm like, this is so hard. What do I do with their hands? Like, there's nothing for them to touch or hold on to. And I'm like, how did I used to do like a 2-hour-long bridal portrait session of a girl in a dress holding a bouquet and a veil? That was really hard. I have to be really creative. Now it's just like, okay, your horse. So yeah, I'm glad I had that piece of the journey. And the other thing too is that when I decided I wanted to switch over to equine photography, I literally went to Kentucky. I was there and I literally was like, I'm going to start doing equine photography again. Like, that's kind of where I learned to use my camera. Why am I doing that? It's so stupid. I stayed up all night long. I built my website and I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to be an equine photographer. And then I was like, well, crap, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I know how many years it took for me to get really good at like weddings and babies. And I was like, how do I get good at this? So that's when I was like, I'm going to photograph 365 horses this year, like literally sitting in a hotel room in the middle of Kentucky. Like, I'm going to do this, and this is what I'm going to do. So whenever I started my equine photography brand, I was like, where do I want my place to be in the market? And this involves you, and you've never heard this story. So this is a fun story to tell with you on the here. I remember like researching all the other equine photographers. I mean, like, who's out there? What are they doing? And of course I found you. And I was like, okay, there's this person. She's really popular. I can tell she's really good at what she's doing. And I was like, I don't want to compete with her. I don't want to do what she's doing. I need to do it differently. So I purposefully, when I launched my brand, I stayed really far away from your lane and what you were doing, because I didn't want to have to compete with you. I was like, well, she's shooting all these quarter horses and all the AQHA people. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go in that lane. I'm going to find the hunter jumper people. Like, I want to go there. That's my people. That's where I came from. It's an easy path to go. And I also remember like looking at like, okay, I knew that I was like, I don't want to dress my clients like she's dressing her clients. I want to do something different. My clients are going to wear ball gowns. And I was like, I'm going to put them in these giant ball gowns. I'm going to rent these dresses from Rent the Runway. And this is how I'm going to build my portfolio here with these giant Rent the Runway ball gowns. And I purposely like saw what you were doing and was like, how am I different? And how can I make myself different and stand apart from what she's doing and stand true to what I believe in, and not come into the market and be like, I'm going after what she's doing. I want to copy what she's doing. And I think that that's so important, because I talk to people all the time that are like, well, so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so's doing this and so-and-so's doing this. And I'm like, that's great. Be aware of what people are doing for a hot second. Make sure that you're not copying them. Make sure that you're not shooting in the same clothes. Your clients, you're not dressing them the same. You are not doing the same, going after the same like group of people. Make sure that your pricing is different. Make sure that your experience is different. Yeah. Make sure that those things are different, but they're true to yourself. And like, that allows the two of us to like have different clients and be in the same market and still like be okay with the fact that there's plenty of people for both of us, because we're different, right? So I just remember like looking at your stuff and being like, there's no way I'm not going to try to photograph quarter horses. Like she has that on lock. I'll give her all those people and I'll find something else to do. And like, there's another photographer in Texas that does some of the same stuff that I do event wise. And their style is totally different. Like they dress their clients in breeches and show shirts, and their photos are a lot in black and white. You know, we can be next to each other and we can be at the same events. And I can be okay with that, knowing that her clients that want to put on breeches and a show shirt are going to go to her. And my clients that want to put on a ball gown and glitter are going to come to me. And like, there's room for both of us, and be okay in knowing that. So I think that that's kind of important to differentiate yourself and to know like you can be in the same market and not compete with each other at all. I don't know if you've felt that experience with anybody that's real close to you or local to you, or you've seen that, or like had new people come in and try to knock off what you're doing. I'm sure people probably try that all the time because everybody knows you.
I mean, I think that's the smartest thing you could have done as a business owner. Just as a business owner is to say, here's the current landscape of the market and here is the gap I'm going to fit. It's the same thing that I did entering this market. Nobody was doing what I wanted to do. There were a whole bunch of equine photographers who would show up at the farm call, photograph people all day long. So let's just talk about the quarter horse industry. They have a lot of advertising needs. They need high resolution files to advertise, and they need a lot of images to do it. So these people would come up and it would be like an 8-hour farm call, and they would go through the whole entire barn, all the people, all the horses. And it was kind of just like a cattle call, like one after the other, right? Get all the pictures done. And that was the current landscape of that market. And I was like, that is so impersonal. I want to be best friends with the person in front of my lens. I want an intimate experience. I want them to feel like this is the best day of their life. So I only book one person a day and they have my full undivided attention.
Right.
Like I'm not going to sit there for 8 hours and just person after person drag them through in front of my lens. Like I want the whole day to be about them. I want them to have the best light. I want them to have my undivided attention. And I genuinely want to get to know them through this process and maintain a relationship with them years afterwards. So when I entered the market and there were a whole bunch of equine photographers, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to come in at the top price point, saying this is a once in a lifetime experience, saying this is a completely different experience than you've ever had with photography before. And I'm going to essentially be as different as I can from the photographers that are there right now. So it's kind of the same thing you just described doing. We just landed on different ends of the spectrum. And this exact same thing with pricing. You and I went in applying the same formula of what we're passionate about and our past experiences driving our own business model. And we just landed on two opposite ends of the spectrum. You know, it's the same process that just got us in very different destinations. And so that's how I entered the market, was like, this is going to be my corner. I think there's a corner for storytelling and about this being a really big production from kind of what has currently happened in that landscape. But what I think is so interesting is I overlap considerably with a lot of photographers in my area, meaning we share clients nonstop. You know, they'll come to me, they'll go to them, they'll come to me, they'll go to them. They have a lot of needs for photography because of the industry that we're in. And so, you know, one thing I love about equine photography is that we're not mutually exclusive. Meaning, if it were a wedding photographer, one wedding photographer wins the wedding and the rest of them lose that wedding, right? They're very mutually exclusive. But, you know, she can book me this year and someone else next year and a different person the year after that, and then come back to me if she wants to, you know, blah, blah, blah. So one thing I've noticed significantly is there's a really strong trend to choose other photographers. And then when it comes to senior pictures, they choose me. and then they go back to other photographers. That is one thing I've noticed in the industry. But I'll say, like, what you did in cornering your own section of the market is you and I have virtually zero overlap in clients, whereas I have a ton of overlap with other photographers, where we swap clients left and right, and it's like a revolving door of people hiring this person, that person, and the other person. I feel like where you and I are such opposite ends of the spectrum on so many levels is that we, are never in the same actual market of clients.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not even pricing. It doesn't all come down to this pricing thing either. A lot of it comes down to like, if my, like, I've never even asked you this question, and I'm just making an assumption here. If somebody wants to look fierce and they want to put on look like a fierce supermodel with their horse, and they want to be like posed to perfection and like literally look like they came off like the runway at the NFR or something, they're going to go to you and they're going to look amazing and fierce with their pony. If somebody wants to like put on a ball gown and go skip around in the pasture and giggle and like, not be perfect and not be posed fiercely, they're going to come to me because our shooting style is so different too, right? And maybe that was a little bit of an overreach with how I explained your style, but like I see your clients and I'm like, oh my gosh, my clients could never dress like that. I wish I could get people to dress like that. That looks like fun, but that's just not who I am. And therefore I don't get those clients, So I think that's cool there. The other thing I'll share is that I have a coaching client that lives in the San Antonio area. So she's in Texas. And she contacted me. And I know when she contacted me, she was thinking, because she's told me since, and she's like, I don't know if Karinda was going to coach me or not. And I don't know if she would take me on as her coaching client. And I was like, well, of course I would. Because I know that me taking you on as a coaching client, number one, I know that you're charging your worth. And I know that you're creating a business that's unique to you, because I don't want to create cookie cutters. But also like through the process, like we created a unique style for her clients. Like she literally said to me at one point in time, she goes, I don't understand why somebody would want to put on a dress and go take pictures with their horse in like a dress or a ball gown or something. That's just doesn't speak to me. She goes, I have no idea why these photographers put their clients in outfits like that. And I'm like, well, that's how I started my business and built it. It's evolved a little bit since then. And she goes, I want my clients in jeans and t-shirts and barefoot playing with their pony. And our businesses are so different, even though we are competitors now. And our pricing is pretty similar. Our system is really similar. And so a funny story is that I did all these portraits at Pin Oak this year. And somebody I photographed at Pin Oak booked an outdoor portrait session with her this fall. And she's like, haha, I got one of your clients. And I'm like, that's okay, because I know that person and I know you. And I know that person is wear jeans and hang out with their pony and just be like a silly little kid barefoot out there in the field. And that's not what I do. And like, I saw the girl's photos and I thought to myself, like, I could have never done that. I could have never pulled off what she pulled off to show that lady's like real true personality with her animals. And she did it flawlessly. And it gives me like a bit of a peace of knowing like there is room for everybody if we're all different. And we are all different. None of us are the same. So it's speaking to that, I think, is so important in our business.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Yeah. So people who are coming new into the market, because I get this question a lot as a coach, and they're like, I would love to be all inclusive and just be all inclusive and charge all the money up front and just give them all their digital files. But like, how do you do that when you're first starting out? Like for me, I always say like, the reason I say like IPS is a kind of an easier way to start out and make money is because you have a lower barrier to entry. And then when people see the photos, they're going to fall in love and they can buy them. And you can even offer like all the digital files. Maybe they pay $500 up front and then afterwards they pay $1,500 and they get all the digital files and you still meet that goal of your income. So you can kind of do that, but without having to get it all up front. How would you say like people who are just starting out and like going out and want to include all the digitals, but don't want to charge $250 for all the digitals, like what kind of advice do you give them to figure out the waters and getting your name out there and being able to charge the money up front?
The only way I know how to do it is how I did it, just because anything else is kind of untested, and I don't know if it
Right.
works. You know what I mean? So the only way that I can communicate that is that I didn't have a pressure to go full time quickly. And I'm very grateful for that. I
Yeah.
was very blessed in a situation where I had another full time job that was very well paying in the finance industry. And I built this up on the side until I was running 2 full time jobs and I had to choose between the two. Right. So for me, it was a slow evolution. And I started at the beginning charging a profitable price. Like I said, right out of the gate when I opened up my business, by that point, I had spent 2 years practicing and building my portfolio before I started charging clients. And so I think that's a longer timeline than a lot of people want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's kind of the only way I can like really recommend it is take the time to know your camera inside and out, to learn how to pose, to learn how to deal with different personalities, to learn how to photograph a difficult horse, to shoot in difficult weather situations. I mean, by the point I started my business and was ready to charge prices that were profitable right off the bat at the beginning, was because I was confident that no matter what the situation was, I could deliver images that were at the level my portfolio was at. Right. So
Right.
even if it was tough weather, even if it was a tough horse, even if the person was super awkward, even if XYZ, I had enough experience under my belt at that point that I wasn't using my clients to practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that
The
makes
practice
sense.
had happened. The practice
Right.
had already happened. Like I had spent 2 years in the practice stage. And so in 2013, when I started my business and I made those packages and they were at a sustainable price point, it was like, I was just ready to start the business as a professional, not as an amateur. I feel like so many people rush the hobby part of it and are like, oh, I could make money doing this, And then and then it took me from 2013 to 2017 until I went full time. So then, I spent the 2 years practicing before I became a business. And then I spent 4 years building the business up to a point. Well, it was the beginning in 2017. So 3 years, 3 years building the business up to a point where it could replace the full-time income I was receiving elsewhere. So that's why it's like, I don't have a get rich quick scheme in this. And I don't have, like, I think we all have the same distance to travel. I think education can be an accelerator to what you're learning, but I don't think they're shortcuts. I think we all have the same distance to travel. And I think you have a lot of sweat equity to put into this if you're going to make it work, from both the photography side and taking the pictures and from the business side. Like, I don't think that education is a shortcut by any means. I think you and I have the same distance we got to travel, and education is an accelerator because you get to cruise past some of the mistakes a little quicker.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a shortcut. And I don't think that there are shortcuts you can take in building this business. So that's kind of my feelings about, if you're going to start off the bat as all inclusive, you better be confident in the product and service that you're delivering, and you better not be practicing on people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for
the
sure.
Practice stage should have already happened.
So here is I'll share my take on it because it's completely different. So I 100% agree. You should not take anybody's money until you know how to use your camera. Go take pictures. I always tell people, go take your hydro flask outside and practice taking pictures of your hydro flask in every lighting situation and every weather all over the place until you can take a gorgeous portrait of your hydro flask anywhere. Then you should consider taking pictures of a person, and then maybe add a horse in, because horses complicate things. It's much easier to learn on just a person. But the thing is like, I'm a big believer in, it's that weird situation in the beginning when you're learning and you're like, how do I learn and how do I practice? And I feel like so many people feel like when they're learning and practicing, that equates to giving away everything for free. And so how I look at this is, you know what, like, gift your time to somebody. Say, I would love to practice. I'll gift you a few photos. And then if they're really good and they love them, then offer to let them buy their files or something like that. So that way you don't have to work for free in the beginning, but you're also not totally running the industry and being the cheap photographer, or giving everything away to everybody, and then nobody wants to hire a real photographer. So that's kind of my advice, is like, gift your time to them, take the photos, give them a few images, and then like have a price list. And even if it's an all-inclusive price list, like even if it's like hey, I would love to donate a portion of my session fee, plus I'm going to gift you 5 images. By the way, if you love them, you can buy more. That's fine. If not, the 5 images, you'll love them anyway. So there's room to make money and be profitable while you're building your business, as opposed to just doing it for free. Because it's kind of that weird, like, how do you build a portfolio and not just, I don't know, like, do you have like that kind of weird, like, what do you do in the beginning? Do you give them all their files? Do you do it for free? Do you make money? Are you upfront with it? Like, there's this weird thing, I feel like. So that's always my recommendation, is just give your time, give a little bit, and then allow them to buy more if they want it, if you're upfront and clear. I think that's kind of the sneaky part, right? You have to be upfront and clear about everything, or else it becomes sneaky.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just my take on it. And that's kind of the advice somebody gave me in the beginning. So yeah. Do you know, or do you mind sharing, like, do you know what percentage of like what comes in your business like goes in your pocket? Like, are you running it like 50% goes in your pocket as like revenue and the other half is cost and expenses? Or do you like kind of know what that looks like for you?
I haven't calculated it out for this year. And the reason it gets a little bit confusing is, as an S Corp, I pay myself a salary. So,
Right.
And that's all business expense. So, right. when I'm just looking at the profit margin straight into, my like accounting system, my bookkeeping system, and I'm looking all of that numbers, it's like, okay, well, I maxed out my 401k contributions, and that's all a business expense. Right. And I paid myself the salary, and that's all a business expense. So I can't rattle off a like 2021's number to you, but in general, about 30 to 40% of top line revenue becomes profit in the end.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I run at like 40% of everything I make. And I'm a big believer in the profit first method. I don't know if you've read the book, but I love profit. I love profit first. So anyways, 40% of what I make goes like to me. It's my personal money. And then about 20% covers my COGS, so my products that I sell, and 20% covers my expenses, is kind of where I run at. And then the rest is like taxes, savings, and stuff like that. So it's always interesting to hear, like, some people are like running it like half and half. Some people are running it 30, 30, 30. Like, it just kind of, it's always interesting to hear where people are there. And I think it's helpful for people to know too, like, I want to make $100,000 in my pocket. What does that realistically look like? And not thinking like in the beginning years when you're like, okay, cool. So if I can make $50,000 in my business, and then you forget how much it costs to run your business.
Oh yeah. No, the dollars in is not the dollars in your pocket. That is, yeah.
Yes. That's been that was an eye-opening thing in the beginning. I was like, these people are crazy. There's no way that it's going to cost this much to run a photography business. And now I look at my bank account and want to cry. So I think this could be kind of a fun topic to share. How do you like tell your clients the value in what they're getting from you? Do you email them? Do you call them on the phone? Like, do you have to like work hard to sell them the value in that, like spending a couple $1,000s up front, or is it easy for you?
Okay. So, from the beginning, I always looked at my marketing as a long game.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I would never be able to instantly convert someone. Someone will not be able to look at my picture and book me the next day. Right. So that was something I, from like the onset of my business, I was like, what I do today is getting me my clients 3, 4, 5 years from now. Yes. And I cannot emphasize how true that has become. I photographed 3 seniors recently whose mothers went out of their way to call me, DM me, or pulled me aside at the session to say, she has been dreaming of this since you photographed XYZ model in 2015. 2015, she has been following you and dreaming of this day for her senior pictures. And that just like really showed me, like, I did that shoot in 2015 for the sole reason of I knew that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it took this long. So that's the thing is, like, I consider that my sales cycle. I have a long sales cycle, meaning your first interaction with me, it is going to be 2, 3, 5. We're at 6 years sometimes, right? Of the conversion to a client from my first interaction with you. And so that is something where, because it is such a long game, my communication of that value is very passive. I'm not picking up a phone and talking to you and telling you why I'm the best person. It is, I kind of always looked at where I was in the market as a luxury. And so I was not out there copying other senior portrait photographers' business models or wedding photographer business models who had a really strong demand for their product. I felt like there is no demand. You don't wake up and say, I need romantic pictures with my horse. So I looked at the boudoir industry because nobody wakes up and says, I need naked pictures of myself. It is like a lust factor that people buy into, of like, build it up in their head and be like, wow, I really want to experience that someday. Right. So I look at my marketing and my sales from a very passive perspective of like me casting out that line and luring you in very slowly. Right.
Yeah.
And at the point that they come to me in my inbox, there's zero selling, zero.
Yeah.
I send them the pricing, they pick the day, bada bing, bada boom, like all of the selling had been done. I'm never picking up the phone. I'm never communicating my value. I'm never walking them through what's in the packages. I send them, the page online, and it's like, I've followed you for 2 years, 3 years, 6 years.
There's no question. Just take my credit card.
Here is my money, right? And that's just kind of, as a consumer, I like to be in control and I like to be educated. Do you like my nails missing? I should use this one. I like to be educated, and I like to feel in control, and I like to be the driver's seat. And so I feel like that's the way that I have structured a lot of my marketing, to be passive. So I'm never overtly selling. It is a very passive marketing plan, where you feel in control when you contact me and you're ready to book and you select your package and then your date's on the calendar. So, and to be completely transparent, that started because I was very busy working a ton of hours in that finance job, and I had zero time for inquiries. I'm like, if you're going to send me an email, you better be a client.
Right.
The selling has to be done. Like, I don't have time to convince you why you need to spend this money on a like one-to-one individual basis. And so that's kind of how it started. And then it was just working so well for me that by the time I went full time, even though now I did have that time to do that, and it really could have changed my situation, I just never stopped that same marketing strategy, just because like it had so much momentum at that point that the clients were rolling in, and I didn't feel the need to change the strategy.
Right.
So I feel like read out of, I just have no time, turned into something different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think that it's super cool. And like the fact that you're able to do that is amazing. Like,
but I cannot convert a cold call. So my Google SEO is great. And if somebody calls me off of Google wanting to book a session, I am like, over 30, man. I cannot pick up a cold call and sell you on my session. It doesn't happen, right? Whereas I'm sure you would have a far better conversion rate converting a cold call on a phone call. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like if somebody stumbles on me on Google and calls me, not a chance they're booking me. Not a chance.
That's so funny. I think that's really important though, because like I had a client that I would say it takes like 5 years at least of a solid, steady brand that is growing and out there in the, putting yourself out there consistently for at least 4 to 5 years to get to that point, because I feel like you have to plant those. I always say like you plant your seeds and you throw a lot of seeds out. You said you cast a net. So you said you cast a net and you hopefully catch some fish. I say you throw a bunch of seeds out and hopefully a few of those seeds catch and grow into clients. Mm-hmm. And I have a client that I just photographed the other day, and I think she met me like 3 or 4 years ago at an event. And she talked to me 3 or 4 years ago. And, you know, when she called me this year, it was like, hey, I'm ready to do this now. I've been thinking about it for 4 years, and it was super easy, right? And so I think that is a really important point in the beginning, like to make smart decisions, to plant the seeds and to cast your net out and just really show up everywhere so that people know you and love you. And then once things start to fall, like that's when the magic happens in your business. Like a few years down the road, when everything starts to fall into place and people just know you and they're like, oh, if we're going to do photos, we're going to her. If we're going to do photos, we're going to her. Like that's when the magic happens and things get so much easier. And then you're like, man, how did I market in those beginning years? That was rough. So yeah, I love that.
A lot of hustle.
I love that. And so I will share what I do when somebody contacts me. So when somebody contacts me, and the reason I do this is because I hate email. I hate email with a passion. Like literally I would do anything to like not even have an email address. I would much rather talk to people on the phone. I think I'm really bad with my words typing. I'm really good speaking words, but typing them, I really struggle. So I get them on the phone. I talk to them. I tell them how it works. I walk them through the process. I tell them what most people invest. Like most people are investing at $4,000 to $5,000 mark at least, but you know, you could also spend $1,000. You could also spend $20,000 if you wanted to. It's totally up to you. We have options for everyone, you know? And I just talk to them on the phone. It takes like 10, maybe 15 minutes. Sometimes people like to tell me a lot about their horses and I get stuck on the phone for 30 minutes or an hour with someone because we know how horse people are. And I just talk to them. And that's my first point of contact. And literally, I do everything over phone calls or Zoom calls. I don't send any emails to my clients except for like their invoice and their link to schedule their reveal goes out over email. Everything else is done over phone or Zoom. So which I think is really different than a lot of people. Most people are email heavy. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. This has been really fun. I feel like I've learned so much and it's really interesting because we are so different.
Yeah. Yes. In every aspect of this. We're different.
Yeah. And I feel like the theme here is like, we're different, but what we do, we believe in, and it works for us. And we both are paid well and we're not giving away the farm. And we're, you know, doing the best to hold up the industry that we're in. And like, I think that's really important for all of this, right? Yeah. I think the only thing similar we have is probably that we both have a child, but we're very different. As you can tell by the backgrounds behind us, which I think is really ironic because like it's polar opposite what you're seeing behind both of us on our meetings, like bright and white and airy and dark and teal. And so I love that. This has been really fun. I feel like we should do this again and talk about something else that's really different about us. We'll have to figure out what else is different about us. And then I told my husband we were doing this and he goes, well, you should go photograph her and put her in a ball gown. She should come photograph you and she can dress you like she dresses her clients. And I was like, that would actually be really funny. But now that I have a new pony, I'm going to need pictures of my new pony. So, you know.
I am so excited for you. I saw that you got a new horse. That's very exciting. Congratulations.
Thanks. It was, and you bought your horse recently too, right? In the last couple of years, right? Okay. Yeah. I feel like it was really cool to like be in a place because of my business that like this horse just happened to come up for sale. And I was like, man, I really don't think I want to miss out on this. I wasn't planning on buying a horse till next year, but I have enough money in the business just to write myself a check and just go buy myself a horse. And it was really cool. It's a cool feeling, you know, like when your business allows you to do things like go buy yourself a fancy horse if you want to. Which is my goal for everybody, to be able to go make enough money to buy yourself a fancy horse.
Yeah.
I guess maybe since we're so different too, maybe we should tell maybe you can share like what you do with your coaching stuff and like your classes and stuff and like how you do it. And I'll share how I do it too, since it's so different. And I think obviously, clearly we're going to attract different people there too. So I feel like that would be good.
Yeah. So I had started separate pages for everything. Everything is KMP Learn. So on Instagram, it's at KMP Learn, and Facebook, it's KMP Learn. The website's kmplearn.com. I've been blogging free education since 2015 on there. So there is so much information if you peruse that blog and keep going through. There's 3 different free downloads and tons of free education on that blog. As for more resources, I have recorded courses, so they're on-demand videos on a whole slew of topics, everything from working with natural light and editing and things with your camera to more heavily the business side of it, pricing, marketing, advanced marketing, posing, welcome magazines, how to prepare your clients, all the above. There's a lot of different course topics there. Or you can work with me one-on-one. That can be in Texas together face-to-face, or I offer virtual calls and coaching. If you don't want to come to the greatest state on earth, then we can meet virtually. But yeah, that is the education side of my business.
Yes. So obviously, since I love IPS, I love teaching people how to do IPS and how to make money that way. But not in a cookie cutter way, in a way that works for what you love in your business. So a lot of what I teach to my coaching clients is finding your why, which allows you to be unique, figuring out how to price yourself to make money, and figuring out how to implement an IPS system that works for you. So that's what a lot of what I do. And then also mindset. I love mindset and money. Like those are my 2 sweet spots, because I found that so much of what happens in our business and our fears that rise up come from our mindset. So a lot of what I do with my coaching clients is our mindset and our money. And so my coaching stuff is called Master Your Mind and Money. And that's all we do. If you want to learn how to take beautiful pictures, go to Kirstie. Like that is her. She's so good at that. People ask me all the time, can you teach me how to take photos like yours? And I'm like, I could, but I just really like teaching people how to make money. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. So yeah, I do one-on-one coaching and I do group coaching. So I'll be rolling out a new group coaching program after the new year. And then I do one-on-one coaching, which is what I really, really love, because I love working with people one-on-one and like getting to know everything about them, like getting to know all about their business, having you like call me and text me and celebrate when you have a client that finally books on your new pricing, or all of those things. So I think one-on-one coaching is really cool. And I think I don't know, did you ever do one-on-one coaching when you were with anyone when you were building your business?
I have done group masterminds, and then I have not done any formal one-on-one coaching. I've had a ton of mentors. Like when I started this business, I worked for that wedding and portrait photographer. So I was employed by her and learned so much.
Yeah, that's true.
And then just had peers in the industry where we informally have done a lot of helping each other. So the only like formal one was more group mastermind focused.
Yeah. So I was like a workshop junkie for a long time. I went to like every wedding photography workshop and I went to like kids photography workshops. I didn't even photograph kids really. I was a workshop junkie. And then I was like, workshops are boring. I need more help. So I started hiring like people one-on-one. So I found one-on-one is like when I made the biggest growth in my business when I did one-on-one, which was also scary because every time I was like, I don't believe them. They're crazy. This is never going to work. So I was definitely that person that hired all the people in my business, and it got me here much faster. And I'm sure like having good mentors that are above you, even if they're just in the industry or friends, is super valuable because it's hard to do this business alone.
Yeah, impossible to be on an island for sure.
You'll drive your spouse crazy asking him lots of questions about what should I do about this? Like, why don't you make some friends? So yes, I love that. So this has been really fun. I'm glad we got to do this, and hopefully everybody has gotten to see like total polar opposites here that are in the same market, do things differently. We both make good money for ourselves, and are crazy passionate about what we do and love what we do. And hopefully like you can take some bits and pieces and like figure out where you lie in the scheme of things too as well. So, well, it was good talking to you, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
All right. Sounds great.